Hello, time for a quick sound check. Make sure everything's working okay ahead of the live stream, which is due to start in 12 minutes and 26 seconds. If you can hear this loud and clear, if you could just let me know in the comments in the live chat, that would be appreciated. And I'll see you in 12 minutes and 15 seconds. I've just got time to go and get a cuppa. See you later. Hello, good evening everyone. Welcome to the live stream from Ian's Studio Live edition number 27. And this week we're looking at wildlife photography. Or should that be how not to do wildlife photography? Not sure. I'm not a wildlife photographer, although I have done some, and some of it's okay. You'll probably learn more from my mistakes than from my really good shots, but this is the theme for tonight, and thankfully I've got lots of images from people that have posted in my Facebook group, which I can share with you, which will point us in the right direction for wildlife photography, and hopefully what I have got to share will be of use to you tonight. So, welcome to the show, and I've seen a number of the usual faces in the live chat. So, if you are new to the show, please say hello in the chat, so I know that you're there, and welcome. Right, so let's get a move on. And let me just give you a little bit of information about the shows. They are weekly. This is as I said, the 27th consecutive week I've done it. And they've all, bar one, which was the second one when I was still finding out what night to do this on, they've all been on Sunday nights at 7:30. So not a bad track record, even if I say so myself. They will be on YouTube in full for quite a while. I've got a huge backlog to go through, edit out the fluffs and the mistakes, which so far, the last couple of weeks have been getting fewer and fewer, I'm pleased to say. So what happens with them is I cut them down on YouTube and just post the highlights there, and the full version ends up on my Academy. Details of that coming up later. So what about the shows? Right, well, do ask questions in the chat, and I have a couple of points within the evening where I'll try and deal with your live Q&A questions. There was one came in earlier. It wasn't so much a question, but I think I'll take it as that. It's about how to get back to shooting again when you haven't for a while. So I'm going to just sort of address that and a few sort of little techniques which might help you and help you get going again. Because for a lot of us with lockdown, it's been really tricky getting started again. I think there was a period of about 8 weeks during lockdown where I didn't take any photos. I didn't make a single image, which is terrible, really. But I'll share some of the techniques that we can do. So ask questions. If you're watching this on the replay, please put your questions in the comments. And if you're watching this on the replay, even if you haven't got any questions, please put something in the comments below here on YouTube, just so that I know you've watched the replay. Because the stats appear to show people are watching it, but I'm never quite sure. I have a feeling that people are just sneaking ahead and fast forwarding through to the bits where I'm talking about their images, but never know for sure. So hopefully some of you will hear this and put a comment there. Oh, we've got a few new faces on here. A few faces popping up in the chat. Hi Jill, nice to see you on here. I'll be talking about one of your images later. Richard, nice to see you on the chat as well. So welcome to the show, folks. And we're not doing bad for numbers on here. So if you aren't subscribed to the YouTube channel, whether you're a regular viewer or not, please subscribe. And that way you'll get notified of all the updates and everything that's going on my YouTube channel. Please comment on the videos when you're watching other videos on the channel on there. And the regulars will know what's coming up next. Please like the videos. I see 7 of you have already liked this one, so good work, folks. The rest of you, it's that little thumbs up button. It's very close to the window that you're watching. You know the one. Go hit it now whilst you remember. And do let other people know about the show as well. I want to try and build the audience, want to reach out to other photographers. not just for my benefit, but so that I can actually help other people. And that's my raison d'etre as a photographer, is trying to help other photographers improve. And I hope this show is just part of that process. Right. For most of you will know that the show is linked very much with a Facebook group that I have. The link for that is over my shoulder. If you're not a member of it and you're watching this, do join, because the conversation carries on during the week there. People posting images on the themes that I've been talking about. So people have been posting wildlife images this week, and at least one person has been posting images based on something I was teaching a couple of weeks ago. So we'll come on to that later on. So it's a nice little community. It keeps the conversation going. I'm active in there, and so are plenty of other people. So it's a great place to ask questions, some of which I will defer to Sunday nights, some of which I'll answer there and then on there. And yes, Gary, the Autumn effect, he wants me to do a tutorial on it. And I deliberately, well, I won't say ignored, I deliberately didn't reply to the question on Facebook about that, because I need to do some research. I'm not as familiar with it as I would like to be before I feel comfortable teaching it. I'm sure it won't take me too long to get up to speed on it, and once I have, Gary, then yes, I'll do a tutorial on it. And just seen Raymond join us on the live chat. So hi Raymond, nice to see you on there. Right, what else? Yeah, you share photos in there, or some, and I've picked a few to talk about tonight and give a bit of feedback on. And yeah, my blog topic list on there, I only ever had one person suggest something out of my list of 200 possible blog topics and video topics on there. But I also do share about things that are coming up and plans for the live stream on there. And that's it. Yeah, I also have a newsletter, and I'm hoping tomorrow or Tuesday to get a newsletter out with some information about what's going on here at the studio on that. And that generally includes some hints and tips as well. The link's down below the video. You can subscribe to it there if you're not already subscribed. So what have we got on the show? Well, we've got our usual news roundup. I'm going to briefly talk about the 12020 challenge, which I set people off on last week. But our main theme is wildlife photography. And I'm going to do this over, well, 2 weeks. I think it will be 2 weeks. Certainly not going to be all tonight because I've only prepared half of it. It's basically, what I'm going to talk about is based on a talk I do when I'm on the cruise ships called How Not to Do Wildlife Photography. And there's two halves to it. First section I talk about equipment, and then a second section I talk about the technique. So I'm going to do the technique part next week. I'm just going to concentrate on the equipment side and a few thoughts on that this week with there. I've got lots of your images to talk about, the wildlife ones and non-wildlife ones, so that's worth saying as well. Don't feel you have to restrict yourself to images on the theme of the week in the Facebook group. Do share any other images that you want feedback on, and again, I've picked up on a few of those that I'm going to talk about tonight, generally just to help everyone with information on it. I can just bring out a few points. I was about to say the good, the bad, and the ugly, but actually, you know what? There's getting very little bad, and there is absolutely no ugly in the images which are getting posted there these days. It's really nice to see, particularly certain photographers who are improving week on week on that, and I'm thinking particularly of John K. Barton, who's been quite prolific in the group, and over the last 2 months or so I've seen a real change in his images there, and a real improvement on that. So I don't think you're watching live, John, but you usually catch the replay, so hopefully you hear that. Yep, we've got the live Q&A coming up, and I've got one question that came in during the week in there. So any other questions, do mention them. So the big news this week is events are back, and I have got my first one planned. I have got 3 photographers for this coming Friday. I've got the model booked, we've got the themes worked out, and just to let people know how the events are going to work at this year, because I know there's a few of you watching this who are local and would like to come, I'm finding the photographers first and then setting a theme that is going to be suitable for all the photographers. And this first one, I found the photographers, we talked about themes, we've got, we're doing a 4-hour shoot, we're covering quite a lot of bases actually on it with that one. It's quite a general shoot from fashion through to art nude. I've got a second group that I'm trying to sort out at the moment. I've got 2 photographers who are quite keen to shoot sort of male fitness. I've got a third photographer who isn't quite so keen on that. So at the moment, what I'm trying to do is find, if I can find somebody else who's really keen on that area, I can do a whole night on that with those 3 people, and the other photographer I can put into a group with some others that I'm looking at for another event. Which order those will work in depends on the availability of the photographers on there. So if you are interested in, and the 2 ones that are coming up, I'm looking for somebody who would like to have a go at sort of working male fitness on there, would be ideal on that. It doesn't have to be a full evening of male fitness. It can be other things with a male model. But I think that 2 of the photographers are quite keen on that particular area. So it'd be good to do something with that. Then the other group, I've got at least one person who wants to do an evening a bit more in depth on art nude. So if you're interested in that and would like to join that group, then let me know on there. So those are the ones that are coming up. And again, the dates, the model, and exactly what lighting setups we work with will be determined by the group of photographers. So it really is training that's tailored to yourself on that. It's a little bit more expensive than the events I've run in the past. We're talking £50 to £60, depending on the length of the shoot and the model and things like that. I'm doing my best to keep the prices as low as possible, but let me be honest, I've got to make a profit on it on the evening. I've got to find ways of making income, because my main sources of income have all vanished with COVID. So I've got to charge a sensible amount on there. I'm sure you appreciate and understand that. So those are happening, and I hope that some of you I'll be able to welcome back to the studio in the not too distant future. They are. I refuse to use the term COVID safe. There is no such thing as COVID safe. I know that's the buzz phrase. I have got a lot of mitigation in place for COVID. The way I've now laid out the studio, which you can probably see a little bit on the image behind me, the way the chairs are set out, I can keep people apart. We're going to be using masks, we've got hand sanitizers, etc., etc. So I'm pitching this really as something where people hopefully will feel safe to come in, will feel safer and confident. That's the word I want, confident to come in and get back to shooting. So sorry for the ad break on there. Let me just talk a little bit about the 120/20 challenge for the benefit of anyone who missed it last week, and just to remind everyone else. These are the same slides, but I'm going to go through it very quickly because I did talk about it last week. You can pull up last week's live stream and have a look over there, and that's not the right text to go on there. Right, yeah, why the challenge? Why the 120 challenge? It's the idea of getting you back to the way photography was in the film days, where every press of the shutter cost you some money. in those days. I want to put a price on pressing the shutter, and that is you've only got 20 shots and you've only got 2 hours to do them, and you can't do retakes. So I'm putting you under a bit of pressure on there and trying to make you think about every shot that you create. And really, you need to think about your composition, think about your settings each time, because it's that one shutter click and that's it. You don't get a second shot at that subject. So how does it work? You have 2 hours, that's the 120 of the 120-20 challenge, to take just 20 photographs. And it's no deletions, they've got to be consecutive frame numbers, there's no retake, so if you mess up on a subject, you need to move on to the next one, and you must agree to show and share those images, which basically means you're going to send them to me, and I'm going to put them into a slideshow to share as part of the stream in a few weeks' time. I have a card which is for shot 0. You can download it from the links, or one of the links below the video, print it out. You have then 2 hours from the timestamp on that card to get your 20 shots, and then there's an end card as well. Just means it's nice and easy for you to see the full set when you're looking through your camera roll on your system. So that's how it works. On there, as I said, send them to me, preferably via WeTransfer. I'll convert them into a slideshow and I'll share them in a special show in a few weeks' time. It's probably not going to be the week I was planning on doing it now, because I'm doing the wildlife over 2 weeks. So bear with me on that. It will come up on there. And if I've got a lot of them, I'll spread them out over a number of shows anyway. I'm putting a deadline of the 18th of September on there, but if you want to do it and you know you can't do it by the 18th of September, get in touch and let me know when you can do it. And as long as I know when you can do it, I can make sure I schedule things in terms of doing them so that I can still include you on there. So it's an arbitrary deadline that I've created. I can be a bit flexible on it. And the original plan was 20th of September. It may or may not be the 20th now when I do the particular show where I show the first of them. Hopefully it will be. Hopefully I've got enough and I can do it by then. But it just depends on how the rest of the live streams pan out. Planning on that this week. There's no prize for it. It's just an exercise to help you with your photography and help you improve. So yeah, do take part. I know at least one person watching this two people watching this have done it in the past. Kev did it, we think it might have been Rochdale or Manchester, and Jill, who's joined the live stream tonight, because I mentioned I'm going to be talking about one of her photos, I guess. Jill did it on board, I think it was Marco Polo, was it, Jill? Let me know in the comments if was it Marco Polo where we did it with you on there. So when you do it, things to look for are details, different types of image so that it's not all the same. Use people, but be mindful of their privacy on there. And let me have JPEGs, minimal editing, please. If you want to convert to black and white, that's fine. If you want to do basic adjustments, fine, but no compositing them on there. And Jill says, yes, it was on the Marco Polo. Great. So good luck, everyone, with that. Right, Q&A, on to the Q&A for tonight. If you've got any questions, stick it in the chat and I'll get to them. If not, part 1, in part 2 towards the end of the show. Do remember there's a delay from when you hear me speak. It's about 30 seconds. Can be as long as 2 minutes, although I've not had that length of delay since I've moved over to the new computer. So hopefully that's solved that one. If you're watching this on the replay, then either put your questions in the comments, or you can email me during the week. In fact, anyone can email me during the week if you've got questions that I can cover on the weekly show. So David Jones asked a question. Now, David's one of these people who watches the show on replay, so I'm not going to get feedback on this as I'm doing it. I'll hopefully get some feedback a little bit later. And his question was, how do you let customers or models choose their preferred images? And he was saying that he watermarks them with a big no entry image and then drops them on a drive for them to have a look through and choose. And he wanted to know whether he was not entirely comfortable with that as a method of working. He wants to know how I do it and how other people in the group do it. Well, I don't let them choose. It's as simple as that. No, well, I say that. What I do, if I'm doing a job for a client, if it's a headshots or something like that, I'll get a good feel from doing the shoot what images they want. I shoot tethered now, so as I'm shooting, the images are appearing in Lightroom, and either as we're shooting or between sets, we'll review them. And as my subject is looking at them on the screen, if they're commenting about it and going, "Oh, I like that. Oh, that works," I'll just hit the pick flag. Shortcut key is a P in Lightroom, and if they hate it, I'll hit the reject flag, the X on there, and then based on that, I've already got a selection from them from during the shoot. So I've got a good idea of what they want, what they like. And then as I'm going through the images, if there are others which are similar sort of idea, which they didn't comment about, I might include them into my picks list. What I then do is I go through and I do what I call a basic edit. And that's just going through, adjusting the exposure, doing a very sort of simple edit on there. I don't do skin softening and lots of local adjustments and things like that. Some of you have seen the way I do skin softening and things like that. And typically I don't do that on all of them. I may pick one or two that I want to do that kind of work on, but typically I'll go through anything I think is a workable image that I want in my portfolio, and I'll just do that basic edit on it. I then put all of those onto, well, in the case of a client, they all just go up onto the Zenfolio galleries where they can order prints from them. In the case of models, I just send them on Dropbox. Then I send them the link to those. But what I do is I say, right, I've done a basic edit for you. If you want to pick one or two more that need specific additional work doing on them, that's absolutely fine. Let me know, up to 3, 4, 5, that sort of order, and I'll do additional work on them. And if it's a client who's ordering prints, I'll say, if it's one that you're ordering a print of, then of course I'll go through and check it. And you know what, with that approach, it's very, very, very rare that anyone comes back to me asking for any additional work. My basic edits seem to be sufficient for, I would say, about 98% of everyone I do shoots for. I think it's probably about 2% I will get asking me to do any additional work on images. It's really is as small as that. And I think sometimes as photographers, we agonize too much over getting an image to that nth degree of perfection when the people that it's for just will not see the difference between, quote, a basic edit and a going through, doing this, that and the other on it. They just won't know and won't notice it. Yes, if it's a final print or something like that, fine, but most people don't need it. I've found that my basic edits have been sufficient, and I have even asked models, I've asked clients, afterwards. I said, look, is there anything else you need me to do to these images on them? And the responses come back saying, no, they're fine as they are. And so that's how I work. I don't have this effectively two-stage thing. Normally it's, okay, I'll go through the images, do them to a standard level. And with Lightroom, because you can carry forward edits onto the next image, it's not that difficult to do it that way. You just do one, so right, okay, next image based on that, a few minor tweaks, next image, next image, next image, and I can go through them very quickly. So that's how I do it. Hope that helps you, David. I know it's different to how some photographers work, and it's very different to how you work. Hopefully it's pointed you in the right direction for that. So there we go. Right, there was another question that came in on the chat, which I just want to talk about. Now, have I got this the right way around? Yeah, I've got the chat up on the window, so I think it's probably gone off by now on that window. My small version I can't read. This was something we were chatting before the show began. For those who aren't aware, there tends to be a little bit of chat going on, anything from 20 minutes to 10 minutes before the show in the live chat. And somebody, I'm trying to remember who it was, I think it was, crumbs. Right. Yeah, Andy was saying he hadn't picked up the camera for a long time, end of July. Oh, excuse me. And I have a great deal of sort of sympathy with that. I know during lockdown I didn't pick my camera up much at all. And sometimes we go through periods like that when we're not doing much photography. What can we do to help ourselves? I know there's other people on actually on the show tonight who've gone through that. In fact, I think most photographers go through it at one time or another. It's almost a loss of mojo. Everything gets too busy and you're not getting on with your photography. You're not doing much. And the longer you leave it, it's harder to get back into it. And what you need is just something to give you a kick up the pants, really, and get going. And I find that a couple of things have helped me over the years when I'm in that situation. One is to set myself a personal project, something I want to photograph, not for anybody else, but just for me. And that's a way of doing it. And the one really good one like that is the one photo per day, the 365 challenge. I think Peter, you're doing that sort of challenge, aren't you? On there. So the advantage of those sort of things is every day you've got to find and think about something to photograph. Now, it doesn't have to be a full studio setup every day with lighting setup. It can be just as simple as, well, what's been my highlight of the day? What's been the best thing of the day? And the day was so bad sometimes that the best I could come up with for a highlight for the day was a mug of tea. So when I did that challenge, I had quite a few photos of mugs of tea in there, but the challenge then was to find a way of photographing it differently each time. So I've got a mug of tea outside, I've got a mug of tea on a kitchen work surface, things like that. So that just helps getting you back into the habit. And there. Things like challenges that other people set, like my 1-20-20 challenge. And just something like that, it was, it's something where you can say, well, I just need to set aside 2 hours for it. And I think even if family is getting busy and you've got pressures on you, I think most people can find, over a space of about 3 weeks, can find a couple of hours just to go off and do something. And because it's a particular thing to do, your families can be quite supportive of that. If they know you've been very busy, I like to go off, when I get busy and I get fed up and frustrated, I go off for a run. And my wife's very supportive of that. So she'll often say to me, you're getting frustrated about this, go out for a run, or go out for a walk, or I go out geocaching or something like that. So ask your family to, if you're struggling yourself to get going again, ask your family to give you a kick and tell them that maybe it's the 1-20-20 challenge you want to have a go at, and say, well, can you look after the kids for a day while I do this? I just want to do something. I want to get back into my photography. Maybe that sort of thing will help you on there. The other thing that I've done that helps me with my photography, and I very briefly touched on it just a few moments ago, is I go geocaching. For those who don't know, what geocaching is, it's all about using, basically it's using multi-million-dollar satellites to find bits of Tupperware hidden in the woods. No, that's slightly joking actually. You're using GPS tracking or GPS signals to find a location where someone has hidden a container. And you then have to locate the container, which may be hidden in plain sight, and sign the log. And it's a challenge, and they can be set out in routes and walks and things like that. And I do that. I find it fun. It keeps the brain going. There can be puzzles to solve on the way and things like that with them. But I set myself another challenge, that wherever I find a geocache, I will attempt to make a photograph of some description. And that might be just a simple photograph with my phone. It might be a photograph on another camera or something like that. And then I post it. And most of those photos, to be perfectly honest, are a load of rubbish. But what it does do is it keeps my brain thinking about composition and makes me think that, okay, this is yet another woodland path. It looks like every other woodland path I have walked down. How am I going to create an image here? And that very process of keeping and using the camera is helpful. And it helps you keep into the swing of your photography on there. And I think there's been some suggestions in the live chat, so let me have a look on there. And yeah, Richard's saying, go and shoot something that you don't normally shoot as a way of getting back into things. Kev said that he got 4 months into a 356 challenge. I did actually manage to complete it once in 2008 on it. It was the only year I did it on there. And again, Rick Bradbury is saying, if you get stuck shooting the same work as often happens with client work, just be selfish and shoot something just for you. No other agenda, just something you want to create. Good thought, good point on there. Kev saying he's been doing lots of headshots recently. Yeah, going to talk about your headshots later, Kev, on there. On that. Michael saying he's signed up for a number of photo events covering different styles. Did a ballet shoot, which included an art nude session. Great. So yeah, all good ways. And I'll tell you another one that you can do, folks. You could sign up to come to an event I'm running at the studio, and I can tailor it to exactly what you need. Sorry, couldn't resist getting the plug in there on that. Right, okay, so let's carry on with this. And feedback. I want to head over into Lightroom at this point and have a look at some of the images which were in the group this week. And I'm going to look at the ones which aren't wildlife at this point. And I'm just realizing I've been waffling on for a long time, and we're still only part way into the what I'm going to cover. So let me get Lightroom up on my screen here, and I can go through some of these images. So Right, okay. Here we go. We're in Lightroom, and let me show. This is the set of images I'm going to talk about in this section. Some of them I'll spend more time on than others. Some I just want to very briefly make a couple of comments about them. Hopefully to help the individual photographer, but hopefully to help everybody else as well with it. So let's go and have a look. I'm going to go full screen on this one. This was from Mark, who'd been having a go at some of the smoke patterns. Now, I did a live stream about this the other week. So he's posted some quite interesting images. The only thing I would say, Mark, with these is that they just need a little bit more contrast to them. So going up to the basic one on here, if I just bring the contrast up and a little bit on the exposure, I think that will help it just a little bit to stand out. Yeah, I can't zoom in to check critical focus on there, and sometimes with smoke patterns, focusing can be a little bit tricky. My solution is always to focus on the end of the joystick that's providing the smoke, and then reposition the camera vertically on there. So I think that's focus, but because I've pulled these off Facebook, it's a bit difficult to say on it. I really like this one, which has had the rainbow effect put on it, but again, I think it just needs those sort of same sort of pull up on the contrast and the exposure to help that. Maybe a tad on the shadows. I know, a bit more clarity. That might be something like that. I think just needs that little bit more to help it with that colour on there, Mark. Hopefully that will help you with that. One from John. He posted a few images of this boat, and as I said, John, I've seen you've been improving week on week, and some of these images are getting quite good. You did one of the boat, which I commented with it was a bit close to the edge, it was a little bit dark in place, and then posted this one. Composition is so much better on this. I just want to sort of call out on that. You've brought the highlights up. What I think it needs is just a little bit of maybe just a little bit of contrast, and then maybe clarity. Now I know you're using affinity. They will have the equivalent of clarity on there. That just helps bring it out just a fraction, maybe a bit more on the exposure with that. And it's not a huge tweak to it. So really nice image that you've got there, John. Well done. And it is good to see your images improving week on week on there. So what else have we got? I get another one of John's, this lighthouse of various iterations John posted on the Facebook group on there. And I like how it's on the third line. I like the use of negative space. I would just say maybe it's a little too saturated, and just pull that back very slightly. I think there's a bit too blue in there. Now I'm going to target this on here and try and just bring that back a fraction on the saturation on the blue area. I'm going to cheat and make it easy for myself and just do it that way. I don't want to bring it down too much. I want a little bit of saturation in there. Just take that down. Maybe luminance on there. I think that's what it needs. It's just darkening just a fraction. I don't know. No, not much actually on the luminance on there, but that saturation just does need to come down just a little bit. It was a little bit unreal on the colours on there, but nice to see the image. Nice attempt getting the sun behind the lighthouse. One trick with that, and I'm not sure whether you were trying to do this or not, is just to have the sun peeking out. It's almost like that with this image. So again, I don't know whether I can zoom in on this or not. I can a little bit. Yeah. And it's looking good. So well done, John. Nice to see that improvement on there. What else have I got? What's the next one? Next one is from Rick, which he posted. I just like the quirkiness of this. He was saying that his subject that he was doing some promotional images for, I think, grabbed a little plant. Now I think this was I still think this was a setup, because I have never seen that plant in your studio, Rick. And I just like the quirkiness of it. And the thing to pull out from this is being ready to capture those quirky moments. And sometimes when you're working with a subject in the studio, yes, we try and direct and get a pose. And sometimes the best shots aren't the posed ones. They're the ones in between. And you've just got to find that point where you're talking and your subject relaxes and they laugh, and you get that sort of effect, or you get your subject to do something, because a lot of people can be quite self-conscious when they're posing, and they've become very stiff and robotic when they're posing. And if you just talk to them and just have a conversation whilst you're shooting, it helps them relax, and you get these more quirky kind of real images. So nice one, Rick, and thanks for sharing. The other thing to point out with it is just a little something here. It's a little trick with posing people, and I know this, whether this was done by Rick deliberately or not, I don't know. Making sure you just get that little air gap between the side of the body and the arm, particularly for female subjects, because it accentuates the figure, it has a slimming effect on them, and your subject will thank you for it, for doing that. So next, another one of John's. I've included this one. I'm just right, fit rather than fill. Right, okay. Simply because, again, it's highlighting that progression with John's work, that we've got a nice use of ratios here, 3-layer to it, the dark sky, the bright pier, and the reflections down below. And he's also managed to capture the silhouettes of the birds on there. So really nice shot on that. And it's nice to see, comparing this with some of the early pier shots that you were producing. This is a much better composition and nice use of colours on there. Again, another one of John's, we were talking about lightening the shadows on there, and we're talking about using curves. Now, again, I know you're on Affinity, but one way to do it in here, and I'll just show you on this, if you've got proper true curves where you can do it yourself by putting points on, just put a point low down and bring up at that point there, and you just lighten that lower section. You can just bring out the detail there, ease that a little bit. It's still quite tricky to see the detail in there. It really is all in shadow on that. But the other way you can do it is with an adjustment brush. So in Lightroom, it's K for the adjustment brush. I'm just going to reset everything, double click on the word effect. I'll go full screen so you can see. And now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to bring the exposure up a couple of stops. Now this is much higher than I need it on there. I'm going to bring the flow right down, and I'm just going to start painting in here. And you can start to see that begins to lighten those areas. And I can go over it as much as I need just to bring that up just a fraction. And I think that's about all it needs on there. And I can then control that just a little bit on here, or maybe a little bit much I've gone in there. So I'm just going to take that out a little bit down there using a negative on there. I think that's enough on that. So what's my before and after? That's before, that's after. Before, after, just raising it up just a little bit on there. It was all it needs. And I'm sure, John, you'll find the equivalent of that in Affinity to be able to do that sort of adjustment in there. Hopefully that one's helped you. Now, moving on. Yeah, David Jones posted a number of images. Now, I wanted to talk about this one, David. I like the pose, I like the model. I'd perhaps like to see the head turned just a fraction further round, just so that it's not true straight on, because the body's got a very slight turn to it. I'd just like to see it a little bit more, and particularly the face on there, because there's something quite weird about the face. I don't know quite what it is, because I can see one side of the nose, but she looks as though she's looking straight on, and that almost makes it look as though she's got a broken nose. So I would just get her to turn the face a little bit more on there. The other thing I would say about this image, David, is that I think you've been a little bit over aggressive with the skin softening. Now I know that's a personal thing. I know some models like this sort of level of skin softening. I don't. I like to try and keep at least some natural element to it. This to me looks a little bit too plasticky, so I would just hold back, pull back a little bit on your skin softening with there, and just watch that pose. But the nice highlights on the skin tones with there works well. Slight turn of the head is what I think that one needs. So moving on. Again, this was quite a dark image. I just wanted to highlight this one. I think for me, get out the local adjustment brush on there. I know it's a style thing, but for me, I'd like to see a little bit more at the top end on there, and maybe just a touch more in those shadows, just a fraction with it, so I can just see a bit more of that detail. And again, it's only very minor on there, so we're going from that to that. But that's a personal style thing. I know some people prefer that, I prefer that, others prefer that. The other thing to just watch is where you're cropping. That's a crop through the neck, and that's typically not the best place. One of the things I tend to do when I'm doing these sort of torso shots is I tend to get just crop below the nose, so you've got the lips in there, you've got that little bit of context of the neck, and I find that often works quite well. So just think about your cropping a little bit with these sorts of images, David, on there. So next, another one of David's. Again, I think it's just a tad on the underexposed side. Something to think about, David. Have you calibrated your monitor? Because one of the things that I find with relatively new photographers, and you produce some absolutely cracking images, but I know you are sort of relatively new, is the whole question of calibrating the monitor, because the monitors by default are way too bright. And what I see on here, I calibrated this monitor only this week because I had a paid work doing photographing some artwork for a client. So I had to get it spot on. And your images, David, look a little bit dark on here. So I'm beginning to wonder whether your monitor is not calibrated in terms that it's way too bright. And one way to find out is if you get hold of a calibration tool. You're going to need one going forward anyway. It's a good investment. They're not cheap, unfortunately, but they are worth doing. The other way to find out is I have a blog post on my website. It's I think it's entitled something, "Why Are My Prints Too Dark?" And I've got a test print on there. It's produced by Fuji. And if you download the link, follow the link on that blog post, and download that image, put that on your monitor and have a look. You should be able to see the full range of brightnesses on the grayscale. Everything should look right with that image. And then the other thing that you can do is, again, don't change the anything on the image, but send it off to DS Color Labs, get a print of that done. So you've got a physical copy of that test print. Hold that next to your monitor and adjust your monitor to look like that test print. And then that again will help you. It's not a substitute for doing it with a calibration tool, but if you can't afford a calibration tool, that's the best way to do it, is to do something like that with a calibration print, just to do that. So again, with this, I like its Deathstroke character. It's Slade Wilson, the character known as Deathstroke, which I quite like. But again, I'd just like to see a little bit more of the detail in here to be able to see it properly on there. I think it was just a bit underexposed, and it might be to do with your monitor on there, David. So right, moving on. Yeah, I think this is my last one on the for this. Yep, it is, and this is the one from Kev. And I just wanted to show this one and to share it because I really like it. I know Kev posted it as a bit of fun, and as a bit of fun on the Facebook group, I commented that the corner image should be swapped diagonally because I would always have people looking into the middle, and that was a little bit tongue-in-cheek. I knew full well that Kev had done that deliberately like that, and it does kind of work actually, with the faces looking out. I think the one thing that spoils it is this one here. It's a little bit dark and she's not looking out. So actually, if you want to keep that theme of looking out, I would swap this one with this one here, perhaps, and that would help with that. But it's a lovely way of doing it. And am I right, Kev, put in the chat that you produced this using Lightroom to put the 9 images together on a grid using the print module on there? It has that look and feel to it. Don't know whether that's how you did it or not. So let me go back to there. Go back to the chat. I need to go and have a look at all the chat images. I bet there's a lot come in while I've been talking because I can't see them. Right. Rick saying he deleted his 365 project images last year, never going to use them, clawed back some storage space. Yeah, Rick wants an event shooting a phase 1 medium format. No, no, organize it yourself. Oh, right. Yeah, Rick's saying the plant was brought with the subject. Right. Yeah. So that also helps, having a subject who brings things along for the shoot. Yeah, Peter saying. Oh, right. Kev was saying he used a bit of software called BlogStomp for the montaging. You can do it in Lightroom, which I'm sure you know, Kev, on that. And I have talked about it in the past on the live stream. Oh, and Andy has put a link to the actually, it's not showing up on here, the link. I don't know whether they're being blocked at all. I'm not getting the option to show them on that. I don't know why. on there, because normally I would get to, if it's something dubious like a link, I would get to approve it. What I'm going to do, Andy, I'm just going to enable you as a moderator, because then you might be able to post the link directly into the chat on there. I don't know whether that would that helps. Rick saying can't post links into chat. Oh, right, didn't know that. Yeah, we'll have to wait and put it in the comments and the description later on there. Right, okay, so let's move on. With this, how not to shoot wildlife. That's our theme on here. And just to let you know, this is, yay, yes, you can post them if you're a moderator, it appears. Who was trying to post, somebody else was trying to post a link earlier. I can't remember who that was. On there, let me just go back through the chat. I'll try and... No, I don't know who it was, but right, okay, back to the thing. How not to shoot wildlife. This is a light-hearted talk that I created for on the cruise ships. I'm splitting it over 2 live streams. We're going to look at equipment this week and technique next week. So, equipment. Let's look at cameras, look at lenses, and then some other gear that you'll need for wildlife photography and how you can use it, and hopefully give you a few ideas on that. Now, with wildlife, we tend to think about wildlife photography as being all about big cameras and even bigger lenses to actually get some good images on that. And yeah, that's probably true for the real serious wildlife photographers. And I know there's at least 2, if not 3, watching. Richard Lovelock for one, and his better half, Laura, are both very keen wildlife photographers. I'm going to share a couple of their images later. And Jill, who's joined the stream, also another very keen wildlife photographer. And people at that level need the long lenses because of the subject, but you don't always need that to get you closer to the action. And I'll show you some other techniques as we go through on this. I mean, yes, you will need it if you are photographing, as I was on one of my trips, a wild cat. Well, I think it was wild. It might just have been mildly irritated. But yeah, a long lens will help you with anything like that on there. Or if the animal you are photographing is scared, or it's a timid creature, like the little monkey here from, this was Devil's Island. If you've ever, Phil, it's actually Papua New, French, oh crumbs, mine's gone blank on there. It's one of the islands near the Caribbean, the famous prison there. There's a film, Papillon, that's the film, and it's the real life place of that. But there's now a colony of monkeys there who were actually descendants of the pets of the prison guards. And now they live there. They are a little bit timid of the tourists. This one was particularly timid, but what was it scared of? Well, it was scared of this one, which is quite terrifying, and that really was a scary ape. You did not want to go near it, and it really was the alpha male. Anyone tried to get food before it had its pick, it had a real go at them on there. So telephoto lens, keep your distance to photograph with something like that. That's where it really comes in handy. Again, photographing some other apes, which you can actually get a lot closer to, but they can turn a little bit nasty, and these are the Gibraltar apes, which I've photographed a couple of times now. Really love the expressions. And because we're high up, you get that lovely misty background with them as well. And I was able to get in really tight with the zoom to get the tight shot of the baby, sort of enfolded in the mother's arms. But you don't need a big camera like that. Going to the right place, even with a point and shoot camera. This was shot with a point and shoot that you don't at Tatton Park, the deer. Okay, I could zoom in a certain way, but I was able to get in reasonably close to it. I didn't want to get too close. They can be a bit nasty in rutting season if you're in the wrong place. So you do have to be careful. But again, you've got options there, even with a point and shoot camera. Think about the composition and you can still get good shots. Again, same trip, and again, compact camera. And there's not really been zoomed much in post-production on that either. That was done in camera, that shot. And even the mobile phone can be used for wildlife photography. So I know there's people watching this who haven't got the big cameras and are not going to go out that way. You can still do wildlife even with that. This is at Laura Park in Tenerife. And it's a big column with swirling water and the fish are swimming around in circles. It's quite spectacular. But I was able to create an interesting image with just a mobile phone. So there are still options with your photography to create images that way. And sometimes that's the only camera you've got with you. I was on, this was the Magellan, I believe. I was up on the top decks and somebody said, did you know there was a bat on, it's actually one of the speakers on the open air performance area on there, fast asleep on there. So I got a photo of it. So is this a bat phone? Never mind. Another one, again from my travels and taken on ship, but this is one, let me show you the technique on this. Using the mobile phone, and the way I did it, this butterfly moth thing landed on the table. I think this was one of the Amazon trips, and the boat was, no, it can't have been Amazon because it was Marco Polo. I can't remember where we were going on it, but what I did with the phone, rather than trying to photograph, I hope you can see this on here, rather than trying to photograph like that, as you would probably normally do, I took the camera phone, inverted it so that the lens is at the bottom, and actually stood it on the table like that with the moth butterfly in front, so that I could get the camera on its level, which also gave me this lovely reflection as well and the varnish of the wood on the table. So it's a technique we often don't think about, of just having the phone upside down to be able to create the shot. I used the same technique to photograph a beetle in the grass. That was slightly out of focus. I think that one was from above, but then this one down at its level was very much the phone upside down in the grass to create the technique. And then, having talked about these sort of techniques again on one of the ship talks I did, I was out one day and somebody said, oh, after your wildlife talk, you do realise you've just walked past I think it was a red and a green beetle in a garden that you really must go and photograph. So I walked back down the path and I spent quite a long time hunting in the shrubbery for a green beetle and a red beetle. And then I looked up and realised what they were talking about. There we go, 2 beetles in a garden in Chile. Sometimes you just miss the obvious, don't you? So let's talk about lenses as well. And we, again, as I say, with wildlife photography, we tend to think about using telephoto lenses and long lenses for wildlife photography. And yes, perhaps most of the time that is what we are going to use for it. But let's not just limit ourselves to that. If you are buying a larger lens though, you really want one with as wide an aperture as possible, get as much light in there so that you can freeze the action. You're going to be you're zooming in, you need as high a shutter speed as possible, which means wide an aperture as possible to be able to hand hold it or to be able to steady it on something on there. And if you're shooting insects, then perhaps think about macro lenses to getting close on there. If you can't get macro lenses, think about things like extension tubes. And I've talked about those in the past on these live streams. But yeah, with a long lens, you can get in close to your subject, as I did here with this raven in La Palma. And again, back on Devil's Island and one of the squirrel monkeys on there. The advantage of that shallow depth of field allows you to get this lovely bokeh effect behind your subject as well, help it stand out from the background and create nice images that way. And again, works well with other animals. And this is one of my few images that has a title. It's called My Hero. And that was at the Chestnut Centre in Derbyshire, sadly closed now on there. But don't just limit yourself to long lenses. I mean, okay, this is not wildlife as such, it's animals. But here I was able to use a wide angle lens for this shot of a camel in Egypt. I got in close, it gave this distorted look to it with all the other camels in the background. And you can get some quite interesting results that way. There's been a growing trend recently with some photographers, wildlife photographers, to do remote shooting for wildlife and to use wide angles really in close to where particularly where birds are. And you can get some really nice shots that way. And I must set that up at some point with the bird feeder in my garden. And experiment with those sort of techniques on there. But even when you've just got a normal lens, you don't have to fill the frame every time to create an interesting wildlife shot. Here in the Caribbean, it was a whole range of gulls. It was shot with a normal lens. There was no big telephoto on there, but we've got something about the animals, their environment, how they perch, to create an interesting shot. Or even when people were feeding them as well, I was able to just capture the birds that way. So whatever lenses you have, whatever cameras you have available to you, there are ways to get some wildlife images with them. Never think, oh, I can't do wildlife because I haven't got the camera and lens that comes out to about here and costs a second mortgage to be able to buy. Always, it's true with wildlife as it is with any other kind of photography. Work with the gear that you've got and you can still create great images. What about tripods? Well, they're more useful for wildlife than they are for sport, but you still need to be able to track animals a lot of the time. So a lot of wildlife photographers use a gimbal head or a Wimberley head to be able to do it. And basically it allows you to mount the whole system around its centre of gravity, so it's much easier to move around and track. What does one look like? It looks something like that. And they're quite expensive, but if you're a serious wildlife photographer using a tripod, they're worth looking at because it does allow you to swing round and to pan up and down a lot easier than a more traditional tripod head would permit. And what about hides and camouflage? If you're trying to get somewhere, you may need to think about that. Disguise yourself so that the animals don't see you. It's worth mentioning why this is important. A lot of animals have built into them, they've recognized man as a predator, and they recognize the outline of a standing human being. And actually what some wildlife photographers have found is that you can get closer to some animals by crouching down, because they find it harder to recognize you as a human if you're crouched. And the camouflage does two things. It can break up the outline, and it can also, well, hide you anyway, to be able to get closer to the animal with that. There are tent-like hides available, and there are permanent ones. And you can even get camouflage wraps for your lenses. So if you've got a Canon beige lens that's going to catch the light, then maybe invest in the camouflage cover for it on there. Richard Lovelock saying that he's got a gimbal head. He's found that the wildlife moves quick even for that. I've never used one, but one of the techniques, I think what people do with it, Richard, is that they set the tension so that they can just move with it, so that it's not move it lock. It's actually physically move with it, but it's still giving you a couple of stops of stabilization over and above everything else that you've got. Think of it in those terms, so that if you were to suddenly let go of the camera, I think it would just go base over apex. But you've got that sort of a movement. But then if something settles, yes, you can lock it. So try that kind of thing with it. Permanent hides. Here's one at Martin Mere that people use for bird spotting as well as photography from there. Of course, you can get your own personal camouflage, but just don't go overboard with it. That was weird. That was a guy. You know how people dress up in plazas? This was in Rio de Janeiro, and there were people dressed up as characters from Star Wars, and then this guy turned up dressed up as a bush, and it's cropped out of shot, but he did have a bucket there for people to put money in. I can't imagine him earning very much for that. It was just bizarre. It really was. And the other bit of kit, similar sort of idea, not for camouflage, but the photographer's waistcoat, to be able to put lenses in. So if you are changing lenses a lot, then you've got somewhere to put them. I find when I do wildlife photography, because I'm not a wildlife photographer, I don't have a 400mm lens. I have a 70 to 200mm lens and a 2x converter. So I'm often putting that converter on and off. So having the waistcoat to be able to keep that in the pocket where I can quickly get it, put it on, take it off, put it on, take it off, really helps. So things like that are also quite useful on there. So that's part one of this talk on wildlife photography. I'll talk about the techniques a bit more next week in that session. And I've well and truly overrun again on this. I'm going to go over to Lightroom and talk about some of your wildlife images that have been shared in the group. I'll try and do it fairly quickly on that tonight. There's quite a lot on here that I really want to talk about. There's very few of them I'm going to do any edits on, just really just to comment about. This one of Richard's, the snake. I love the composition on this. Nice use of the rule of thirds. Very simple. Tells a story on there. Just really like it. I just thought it was worthy of mention. This one from Walter, incredible macro on there. I've got to ask Walter, how did you get the insect to stay still for it? It tends to take me quarter of an hour to set up for a macro shot. So anytime I try to do insects, they've gone on there. And that is just so close in. I'd be really interested to know what gear you're using, because of course I don't have that information because Facebook rips out all the metadata on there. I am going to have to set something up where you can upload your images and give me the metadata, folks. Again, another one from Walter. Again, lovely composition on this, and lovely and sharp as well, the fox. Can I zoom in? Yeah, that is zoomed in. And the way it just fades out to nothing on there, really well done with that one, Walter. I really like it on here. And similarly with this, same sort of idea. This one though, I would just say, I'm a little bit bothered that the grass, it is distracting a little bit, as is the other ape on there. I know there's probably not much more you could do about it, but maybe could you raise the camera a little bit higher and just get a bit more of that ape in? I don't know with it, but it's still a very nice shot, and thank you for sharing it. I like the composition on here, on there. Right, Jill, your yellow and pink zebra, which goes back to a comment I'd made earlier in the week. I do like this. I want to say one thing about it, and that is about the cropping on here. I know there's a temptation with wildlife. We end up bullseyeing images, but maybe just think about cropping, because up here this bright area is drawing me away from the zebra, so I would be tempted to lose a bit of that at the top, maybe lose a little bit on that side, because that section, let me go full screen, this section down here again pulling me away slightly, up a little bit on there. Now I'm just trying to find a position of this crop, and I think something like that is a much better crop with it on there. I would also, and the regulars know what's coming on this, I think this is definitely one which would benefit from a vignette. And as ever, I do my vignettes, bring it right down so it's way too far. I'll then feather it off, and now what I'm doing, hang on. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to put my hand over the panel. I'm going to put the mouse on the amount slider, as you can probably see, put my hand over there so I can't actually see where I move it. I'm just looking at the image. I'm moving it out now until the vignette appears to have just about gone, which I think is about there. Then I move my hand away, and you can see it's still at -21. So the reason I do it that way, as I've said a few times on here, is that the purpose of a vignette is to draw you into the image, not to draw attention to itself. So has it worked? Well, if I toggle that on and off, you can see the difference it makes. And yes, it does help draw us in to the zebra in there on that. So that would be my advice on that one for you, Jill. Let's move along. Roger, I don't know whether you're watching, but I just wanted to highlight this one. I think it's a lovely shot. Some wildlife photographers don't like the blurring of wings on flying birds. I like it on here. I think it works really well. I'm not a huge fan of total blackness behind something like this, but it almost looks as though it's been shot in a studio rather than in the wild. So I'd like to have seen a little bit of light on something in the background in there, but the bird itself is well exposed on there with that. And the hummingbird, I'm struggling a little bit with this one, Roger. I like the way it's been captured, but it almost looks as though the background's very artificial on it. Now, I don't know whether that was real, but I'll tell you for why. It looks as though it's in very, very sharp focus. So almost as though the whole thing's been cut out with it. So if that's the case, I think I prefer to see the original background on there rather than this fake Hessian on it. If it really was that background, then I suppose not a lot you could do about it, I'm afraid, on there. I've got to talk about this one of Laura's underwater shot of a couple of oh, she did say what type of whale they were. Richard, Laura, I'm assuming that you're both watching on the same screen. Put in the chat what type of whale they are, because I can't remember without going over to the Facebook group. But let me tell you the story behind this. Laura did it. She wasn't swimming. She was in a rib dinghy thing, and it's with a GoPro that she just stuck below the water level and pointed it approximately in the right direction, and that's what she got. Again, proving that you don't need that huge lens and big camera to get really good wildlife images. You can still get really fascinating images, and I really just wanted to show that one off. I thought it's a lovely shot and a lovely technique to talk about on there. This one, yeah, I like it. It's just, for me, I'm not sure the focus is quite critical on it, but the framing and the composition is great. Capturing the moments that the bird has caught its prey on there, absolutely well done. Exposure spot on, and that in itself can be quite tricky with wildlife photography. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about next week about getting exposure right for wildlife, and in particular with birds. Peter's elephants. Again, interesting shot. It's a shame about this plant in the foreground. I just wonder whether that's something that could have been pushed down, or whether just a couple of paces over to the side would have given you a better view on that one, Peter, with it. But other than that, interesting shot, but watch the foreground in it with that. I just love this one of Richard's with the bendy leg giraffe and its reflection. I believe this was shot at night with some artificial lights on, which gave a horrible colour cast, thus the conversion to black and white. And I'd say with this also, I'd be just tempted to lighten it very slightly on there with it. Again, if you've not calibrated your monitor, Richard, have a think about doing that, because I think all of these are just a touch on the dark side with it. Just a little hint of increase to the exposure, I would, on there. Maybe only 2/3 of a stop is all it needs. But again, I just love this reflection. What might be an interesting thing to try, and I haven't tried this in advance, I sometimes do when I'm doing these sort of talks, is just to do that with it, where actually you invert the image. I think that's quite an interesting sort of plays games with the mind, just inverting it like that, where you've got the reflection at the top with it. So yeah, have a think about trying those sorts of techniques with it. This one, I'll tell you what caught my eye on this. It wasn't the whale, it wasn't the dinghy, the rib. It was the fact that it was a building in the background I recognised as Funchal. I thought, I've been there. I've never seen any whales there. But yeah, nice shot. And the idea of having the people in there to give this sense of scale is what really works. And that can be a big problem with wildlife. that we don't have anything to give a sense of scale. I'm going to talk about that next week with a beetle. I mean the insect type, not the car this time, about how the scale is a big, finding a means of displaying the scale became a big problem on one trip that I was on. And this one, the puffin, this, I don't know whether you've experimented with this, Richard, but I wonder whether a big panorama shot of that might be an interesting way to display that one. And I think there's just something about it as a panorama with it. I just had to include this. Just, yeah, be careful when photographing wildlife. Sometimes they can be a little bit mischievous, particularly the apes on there. But I like the fact that, what's it got? Paw on there. And this one from Andy. I'm wondering about the crop on this. I've not tried this, but the sky's not adding much to it. And I'm wondering whether, again, a panorama shot might work better with it. I think that's the correct panorama rather than, yeah, I think I prefer just that hint of sky and that horizon right at the top there for that. You might even get away maybe just losing a little bit on there like that with it. Not sure with that, but let's go back for the full thing. And moving on. Andy, again, I don't know whether you're on. Yes, I think you are on live tonight. Watch this bright area at the top. It's kind of drawing the eye away. So what I would try and do, I don't know whether I can do this in here. I'm going to take a risk. I am going to say edit in Photoshop. And let's see whether I can do a quick edit on this to try and sort that out. Let's zoom into 100%. Spacebar to drag and reposition. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a little technique with the polygon lasso on here, but I'm going to feather this up a long way. I'm going to feather up to, I'm going to guess about 100 on here because I want to try and protect one area. I want to protect, if I can, the deer. So just try doing that. That might be too much of a feather. So now I'm just going to use the stamp tool and Alt to select from down here. Oops. And the brackets, bring that right up to that sort of level and just try and, oh, too far. Bring that up to there. Move back down. Actually, if I go full screen, you can, I forget that full screen on here, when I hit my shortcut key for broadcast software affects it. So again, Alt down here, just pull a bit more up like that. Alt, select back down there and just paint in up there. And that, I think, just about does it. So Control D to unselect that. And File, Exit, save it. Yes, and that should come back over into Lightroom with the full edit. So you can see how that's just filled in. That was fairly crudely done on there, but I think that really helps it. And I would probably do the same down here. Now this I can do here in Lightroom. Q to get the brush, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to paint over Done. And it's picked completely the wrong spot, as it is wont to do, over to somewhere like that. And oh, that should be feathered, and it isn't. I'll feather that off just a little bit on there. And I would end up with something like that on there. Oh, didn't mean that. What have I done? What's happened to my image? Yeah, here we go. So we've gone from that to there, just that little bit of thing, and it helps keep your eye on your subject with it, rather than that bright area pulling you away. Would I do it with this down here? Quite possibly, or I might just do that on there, and I think that is more or less what I would do with that one. It just simplifies that image so much more on there. So what else have we got? That was the original. Is that it? Have I finished? I have finished. So back over to my PowerPoints. We're just about done for the evening. Let's have a look what we've got in the chat, which is, oh, not that. Right. Jill agreeing on the crop. Richard going no, but for what I have no idea, because I couldn't read the comments at the time they came in. Pilot whale, yeah, on for the creature. Right, so what have we got in chat? We've looked at that. I don't see any more questions coming in there. There appears to have been some new images or new notifications. Let's just check anything come in on the Facebook group that I need to be aware of. No new images on there on that. So let's carry on with what I was doing. So I'll just wrap up. I want to just say thanks to everyone for watching. It's great to have had a few new names in the chat, a few people sharing images this week that I don't normally see on there. And if you are new watching this, I hope you've enjoyed it. And found it interesting and helpful. If you have, then please come back next week. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so. Do comment and hit that like button. There's only 11 likes and there's 18 of you currently watching. So go hit the like button on there. So next week, I'm going to continue with this theme. I'll look at the techniques involved. Again, it's fairly light-hearted from my point of view. So carry on sharing your wildlife images in the Facebook group this week. We'll carry on with that theme, and I'll share more of them and talk about more of them, and give you a bit of feedback on them this time next week. So until next week, as ever, keep making great photos, and I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching, folks. Right, this is the point where I do the the alternative ending for when this is cut down. So if you'll bear with me, anyone who's still watching, right, here we go. Thanks for watching this cut down version of In Studio Live. The bulk of this content now has been moved over to my Academy. If you want to join the Academy, details are on the screen there. It's only £6 a month or £60 a year. Lots of resources in there, sheets for helping you with various photographic projects called my inspiration sheets. There's lighting sheets for the studio photographers, and there's well over 100 images with details about how they've been processed, why they were taken with the settings they were taken, etc. called My Academy Bites. So have a look at those, and there are some video tutorials as well. So hopefully I'll see you in the Academy, and if not, well, I'll see you perhaps on the next live stream here. And the live ones the full versions do stay up here for a while. So until I see you anyway, whatever it is, wherever it is, keep making great photos. See you in the future. Bye for now.